Welcome back to Faith's Place, a podcast where dreamers have the liberty to dream. I'm your host, Phaedra, and I am so excited that we have this time to dream together. I guess I want to be starting something because I'm going to get into this Michael review. I do have my undergraduate in theater and my master's is in film and creative media with the emphasis in screenwriting. So that's the lens that I'm coming from. But overall, I'm just a music lover. I'm an entertainment lover. So we're going to talk about all those things, okay? Let's get into it. I need to start off with Victoria Thomas, who was the casting director. A list of stuff she did, that. All right, because you cannot tell me that Nia Long is not Katherine Jackson. And was that really Jafar or was that Michael? I don't know. First and foremost, I just want to go over Nia Long's performance. She deserves every penny that she's going to get, okay? Because she said so much without saying so much. So let's start off with the looks that she gave. I would really love to see the screenplay. I want to know what's in those action lines because she delivers the best looks ever. And it reminded me of soap operas because my little thing with soap operas is that sometimes they will give you a look at the end of the scene, but you never really know what that look was about. It's like, did they understand what they just saw? Were they in love? Did they hate the person? Like, what did that look mean? However, that is not the case with Nia Long as Katherine Jackson. Somehow you knew exactly what she was talking about, and she did not utter a word. Now, as a screenwriter, they teach you that every word in a screenplay needs to be there for a purpose. So once you write it and then you go back over it, you have to take out any filler words. And the idea of that is to make sure the dialogue is as concise as it needs to be. But I also think that's true to Katherine's personality in general. I was listening to an interview with Nia Long. She talked about how people are always watching the Jackson family. And so she was very particular about giving a certain look that it was understood between her and the kids. Now let's turn it around to her marriage. When you're in a relationship with someone with intense moods, you learn how to say things so it doesn't escalate the situation. They were together for a long time, and I felt that she spoke from a place of strength and not from a place of fear. I thought she held the power. She looked at Joe and was like, when you gonna let that boy grow up? And she meant that. She said it in the nicest way possible. Now, speaking of Joe, I was most impressed with this character. Coleman Domingo did an excellent job portraying Joe Jackson with empathy, where I looked at him and it's clear that he's supposed to be the antagonist of the film. He was definitely Michael's antagonist. But it was so hard to hate him in this movie because of the way that Coleman Domingo portrayed him. After watching that movie, I wanted to know more about Joe. I wanted to know about his background. I wanted to know, was he musically inclined? He had to be musically inclined, especially that line when the lady from Motown said, "Oh, perfect pitch." And he looked at her and said, "We almost there." What? I was like, Joe, Michael sounds fine to me. What is you talking about? But that line, instantly, I said, oh my goodness, who is he? And what is his relationship with music? So from my research, I found out that he was an aspiring artist. He was musically inclined. And so that made all the difference in the world. I know there's a saying, it's like those who can't do teach, but I wonder how he was as an actual musician. And I really hope that in between him managing his kid's career, that he did have the time to enjoy playing music again. Because one thing I've learned is that creators have to create. That's another thing. Was he not producing enough music? Maybe that made him really intense. Let me tell you, the creators can understand what I'm talking about. When you're not creating, oh baby, it's like fire shut up in your bones. But also, I looked at him understanding his background. He worked in this factory in Gary, Indiana, in the time frame of when Black people really weren't considered human beings, right? Their rights were not equal to the rest of the world. And so you saw him understanding, like, I gotta get out of this. Like, this life right here, working hard like this is not my destiny. Like, we're destined for greatness. And I remember Oprah saying that. She talks about it all the time. She was outside with her grandmother and they were hanging up clothes, and her grandmother looked at her and was like, baby, you gotta learn how to do this because this is what you're gonna do. And Oprah was young. And she knew that when her grandmother said that to her, she was like, this is not my life. I'm going to be something great. And I think that was inside of Joe Jackson. Now, this is making me think of Walter Lee in A Raisin in the Sun. Walter Lee felt that society has stifled his dreams based on his race. And Lorraine Hansberry went on to say in the play, seemed like God didn't see fit to give the Black man nothing but dreams, but he did give us children to make them dreams seem worthwhile. I feel like this explains Joe Jackson's stance so perfectly. I also listened to Coleman Domingo in an interview, and he was saying that his goal was to find Joe Jackson's humanity, and he succeeded in doing that. He did it so well that when that fax came, and y'all know, if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. Like, how dare you, right? Like, that's what he wanted to say. I worked so hard to make sure that my family is successful, and now you're taking me off the project? And thanks to Coleman Domingo, I understood Joe Jackson's perspective. And it's not only what he brought to the role. I do think that Joe Jackson's character was written not as intense as it could have been, which is good, right? It's a family film. You don't want to scare the little babies. But I also know that his family produced the film. So they were probably very cautious about how their father was portrayed, and rightfully so. Another scene that made me realize the importance of Joe's intensity was when the Jackson 5 was recording. And it was like, hey, Michael, you got to keep still. And Michael kept moving around. When you're trained to do something right the first time, it's just ingrained in you, which is probably why Michael was such a perfectionist and why the music and the productions that he gave the world were outstanding. But also, when you get to a recording studio, time is money, money is time, and everybody don't want to be there all day. So it's like, hey, can you sing this note so we could be out here in 30 minutes instead of staying in the studio for 5 hours? So this brings me to Giuliano Valdi, who played Little Mike. He captured the essence of the innocence of childhood, and he did it with grace and ease. It was natural. It was like second nature, not even second nature. It was first nature to him. Totally suspended my belief. I thought I was looking at little Michael Jackson back at Motown. Incredible job. Lorenz Tate as Berry Gordy. Oh my gosh. Another example of exceptional casting. For the reasons I explained earlier when talking about Joe Jackson, I get really sentimental when I think about Motown. When you contemplate the era in which it began, to all the creativity that flowed out of it, and how it laid the foundation for today's music. It literally changed the trajectory of the music in America and in the world. Now, Michael Jackson had to be talking about Jafar when he sang Man in the Mirror, because that is a spitting image of Michael. From my research, I found out that Jafar actually spent about 2 years studying for this role. And you can tell he did the work. He spent the time to make sure that he honored his uncle, he honored his family, and he made a good name for himself. Now, since this is a show where we discuss all things entertainment, I want to move into what this biopic revealed about Michael Jackson's character. I know Michael Jackson once said that he loves to be mysterious, and I think this is an excellent branding technique. I know Beyonce does it, Aretha Franklin talked about it. I'm sure there are other celebrities. Please let me know in the comments. But this is excellent branding because it generates conversation, keeps people on their toes. Just take Beyonce. No matter what she says, no matter how she poses, people have a theory behind everything that she does. We know that she is very particular. Nothing is by surprise. Same with Michael Jackson, but it keeps people on their feet. Another insight that I got from this film that Dawn Lewis actually talked about when she was on Faye's Place is that show business is a business. The way that I remember the film Michael, I don't think he was comfortable in the business aspect, especially in the beginning of his career, but he made sure that he had people to handle his business. Also, there's gatekeepers at every level, no matter how famous you are. I mean, Michael Jackson was extremely famous and he had a hard time getting on MTV. He had to deal with gatekeepers. But most of all, I think he's teaching entertainers to keep that childlike wonder. Be whimsical. I mean, he had giraffes outside of his house just walking by. His obsession with Neverland allowed him to think outside of the box. And great creators think outside of the box, but you must protect your creativity. No one's going to do that for you. That is your job. And I really feel that's important for us to remember. We can only control the things that we can control. This business is fickle. It is subjective. We are only responsible for the things that we have in our control. And what's that? Making sure we remain creative, putting out our best work, and repeating the process. And then everything else will take care of itself. It reminds me of a production that I was in. And let me tell you, there were major distractions. And I don't know what it was, but I was just so zoned into whatever I was supposed to be focused on. And now looking back with hindsight being 2020, I'm so glad that I was able to observe what happens when distractions take over. And so the lesson I learned was keep the main thing the main thing. Your job is to be creative. So invest in your creativity. Now, speaking of creativity, I have to shout out the costume designer, Marcy Rogers, and the makeup department. You guys did your homework, you put your best effort into it, and I just know that the budget for this film was amazing. It's all about the details, and you got them correct. Even LaToya's outfit, like with the headband, looked just like my girl. It truly takes a lot of people to put on a film, and it just reminds you that creativity is a group effort. No one person can do it alone. I believe this film is worth the watch, especially to you since you are aspiring to be in the entertainment industry. And I want to know what you're thinking too. What did you learn from this movie about the entertainment industry, and what are you incorporating into your daily practices as a fellow creative? If you enjoyed this episode and what we're doing here on Faye's Place, please be sure to give us a great rating at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, you can check us out on YouTube. Tune in next Monday where we have another episode with you in mind. I love you all for listening. Hi friends, it's Phaedra, and you are listening to Faye's Place. Join us each week as we talk to industry insiders about their journey and what it takes to turn dreams into a reality. Whether you aspire to be in the entertainment field or just inspired by the hustle, count this as your backstage pass. Join us every Monday for a brand new episode. And also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Faye's Place.